Discussion as we left off on our August 28th meeting. We had discussions in regards to follow-up from the Compensation Committee meetings. We had, I think, a total of 3 meetings that we reviewed with staff and teachers and bus drivers and a variety of committee members, and we appreciate everyone's input as they were very active on those committees. And we did make a presentation to the board in relationship to trying to move forward. One of the commitments that we made as part of that committee was that we wanted to move forward. This was our time, this was now that we needed to make some decisions and get ourselves in a position so that we could look at where we go for the future. This discussion has been on our plate for many, many months, and quite honestly, it's been discussions. Now we're at a point in time that we really feel that, we need to move forward and take some action. And it is a 2-phase piece, as I mentioned the last time. We need to realign the salary scales that puts us in a position where we know where we need to be, and then work toward achieving that as a whole. It's not that they were to go together and they couldn't go any other way. We need to first get those scales established and then be able to move forward with achieving those. And, I wanted to open the floor up. I know there was a variety of different discussions. You've had an opportunity to review a variety of different things. One of the things in that salary presentation that we talked about is we wanted to put together something that was feasible, something that was attainable. To go and put together a salary scale that's not attainable doesn't put us any further along than we are right now. So we have to put ourselves in a position where we can work toward achieving that. And I'm certainly open to any discussions or questions.
I've got 2 things.
Yes.
First, I think we need to do a separation of thought. I've done some research, and as we continuously talk about pay scales have been implied raises. And lots of research I've done, pay scales don't necessarily have anything to do with raises. Pay scales are more based on experience, education, capabilities, skills, and pay scales are that way. The biggest place I saw pay scales overlapping with raises are in the step raises. And as I mentioned last time, I'm not sure that we or any school system can do that. And I think step raises, that word is not synonymous with pay scales. If you'll go to an industry, and you may be a certified welder, you may be a pipe welder, you may be 3 different levels of welders, and they have pay scales for those different job levels. You may be a machine operator, or you may be a B, or C classification in a position. Those are pay scales. But when those pay scales are administered, there are no implied raises. That's what those jobs pay. And that's a pay scale. A pay scale in our situation is always implied as a continuing raise. And I think they're entirely different things. That pay scales can be a level, and if you never got a raise, you have a pay scale in place that everyone on that pay scale, if you've been teaching 10 years, everyone makes the same money, and I certainly believe that should be true. But to imply that raises are tied with pay scales don't mean raises, as far as anything I've seen. And I've looked at a lot of different things just looking at the word pay scales. Pay scales are more aligned with, they can be experience, they can be education, they can be skills, they can be qualifications. A lot of things that pay scales can go with, but pay scales are never guaranteed or implied raises that I see. So as we look at this, I think we need to look at what we're achieving. What are we trying to achieve? And the thing that has got us where we are implied raises. And I still believe that we can't do that. We give raises when we can, and that's it. But to say our pay scales are going to be implying that there's a 1.5% raise annually for everyone, or whatever that may be, I don't see that as pay scales. I see that as step raises. And I personally see, and I've looked, and it's funny, again, Bath County's struggling with this right now, but as I'm looking at things over the weekend, just because there's a couple of things, school systems in Tennessee, it's not just in us anywhere, they're struggling with their pay scales because they're all considered as in the step raises. So I think a lot of years ago, they could have been synonymous, but I think in most businesses and most industry, those are two entirely separate things. A pay scale does not guarantee or imply that you get a raise every year. And as I look at that, I put that on paper, and I never see anything that says that, unless you build ahead. If we're looking at a 10-year teacher today, that's a 10-year pay scale. But if we're going to tell that 10-year teacher that in 15 years, they're going to be making more than that 15-year teacher, we can't say that if they progress that 15 years. So we have to be careful in doing that, that there can be two separate things, because if that 10-year teacher is going to catch up to the 15-year, that 15-year is going to get a raise too, and that's always going to spread out with the years. So just as we're looking at what are we achieving, we're looking at step raises, we're looking at pay scales, and it's different things. In my assessment, it's different things. Now, the thing as we're talking about tonight, and my question was last time, the committee had talked about several ways of saving money. I want to see those first. Those are the things I want to see. I just can't feel comfortable spending money thinking we're going to cut out of a budget. The only conceivable additional in budget money that we can count on is ADM, and that can't spread but so far. We have no idea what the state's going to do, but any additional money from the state could cost us more money as we're taking that money. So before we're looking at raises, spreading any of this money out, and I certainly believe that the pay scales today should be made even. Every 10-year teacher should be the same, every 5-year teacher should be the same. I do believe we need to equalize those.
That's exactly right.
But I need to see where this money's coming from. But I think as we do that, we need to be careful and not imply that these people are going to be making that money a year, 2 years, 5 years from now. There's no way that we can guarantee that. And we can work as hard as we want to, but in the last few years, being on this board, there have been a lot of years that have really been tight. And there's been some tight years we've still managed to get raises. But we just can't foresee. We know that our city revenue is basically going to remain the same, possibly less. We don't see a lot of growth out of the city. The state, in my time on the school board, has tied strings to every extra penny they give us. So the only additional money that we can look for is additional ADM. And that will get us in a point now and then. I look at the students right now as compared to last year. In one place we took a real hit, pre-K, that doesn't get us any money, but it will. And we couldn't do a pre-K teacher, so look at what the numbers, look what happened. So we're potentially losing those students that would be that ADM money, and that's the only extra resource that we have. And as we talk about savings today, I want to see those savings, and we can't project. We can hope and talk about retirements, but from my entire time on the school board, we've talked about that and how much money we can save. We can't go hire a first-year teacher just because she's going to save us $20,000 if we've got a teacher that we know is a whole lot better that's going to cost us $10,000 more or some number. We're looking at the best for the students. We're not looking at the cheapest. Young teachers, certainly they need to get in there, but to say we're going to hire them just because they're going to save us $20,000, I certainly don't want to be in that. I'm looking at the best teacher, and we have to depend on our administration to decide that best teacher. And sometimes we were lucky that went way with us with a young math teacher, but there are some places we're going to have to pay a premium to get a teacher.
Well,
So we can't project. We can't project a budget based on we might save money on retirements or getting cheaper teachers. We just can't do that.
I think one of the things that we need to do for the system, though, is exactly what we talked about. It needs to be standardized, period. As we have new teachers coming in, whichever, whether they're experienced or they're not, this having two different pay scales is not good for our entire system.
I just agree with that.
I'm sorry, I know, that's what I'm
Yes,
saying.
yes.
And so that's the reason for part one, part two. We need to establish a scale that we can work towards. Now, whether we are able to fully achieve the scale, I'd love to tell you that we will be able to. And there's a variety of things that we will work toward and be able to show. But I think one of the key pieces that we've committed to coming out of the compensation committee is we need to standardize. We need to have it such that it's not before 2012 you get paid this, after 2012 you get paid that, and oh, by the way, if you were here and you got these increases, we have people all over on the salary components. We need to get that back to a point in time, so whomever is hired, that is that 10-year person, that they're at the same amount that everyone else is, instead of this disparity between multiple scales. I think that's our first and foremost step, and that's what we were presenting. That's where we need to be to get ourselves back standardized. And if I've misspoken, Mr. Baker, from the committee, you're welcome to share, but that was one of our main goals, that we needed to standardize things to begin with, and then from that point forward, see what we could do to work to achieve. And in doing so, that was what was presented, was a standardization of those scales, so that we had something consistent that we could work toward.